Hello everybody, I am filming today from my parents' beautiful, gorgeous garden on a really lovely, beautiful, warm day. We just have so many flowers, it's gorgeous. And that lawn I cut yesterday. I wanted to speak for a moment on the topic of self-care for body workers, and actually I would say the importance of meaningful self-care when we work in a supporting capacity, like a body worker or a yoga teacher or a facilitator of some kind. And this came up in the context of my upcoming residential level 1 and level 2 Thai massage practitioner trainings in September, just outside of Lisbon. And the question was, why is it residential? Do you also run classes in the city? And I think that's it's a really valid question, because of course it being residential makes it more expensive. So here's why. From experience, I can say there is a huge difference in the kind of processing, the learning, the depth that we dive into when we get out of the city. So when the trainings are residential, we are away from the city, and the day-to-day stress of everything, whatever kind of life means to everybody individually, we get away from that for a week or two, depending how long you come for. We start the day with yoga in the morning, or a kind of movement practice. We get cooked for, and the meals are wholesome and healthy and delicious and so nourishing, makes a huge difference. But also not having to actually cook for yourself also makes a big difference. It's a real treat. We're out in nature, surrounded by nature. In like where I'm running the trainings most of the time, we are surrounded by these rolling hills of vineyards, absolutely gorgeous, a very sort of lovely, sweet countryside. You get a lot of time to rest, but also to sleep. Most of the time we go to bed really early, and so we really get a chance to rest, which, when do we ever get a chance to rest? There is a more meaningful connection with all of the others, and that's actually a huge factor, because obviously we also spend some of the free time together, and so we make friends, we have meaningful conversations, there's more sharing going on, there is more holding space for each other, and the group gels very differently when obviously in a kind of co-living environment for a whole week or for two. There is a lot more space for self-reflection, for the personal growth, just for the self, for ourself. And there is a lot more room to dive in a lot deeper. And so there's a different quality to the trainings. And I'm not saying, when I run the training in the city, that's bad. Not at all. It's different. It's a different experience. And I notice about myself that I would say I'm probably also the better teacher when I'm in that environment, because I get to benefit from that too. And I don't need to rush home and still deal with everything else. So, yeah, I probably say that's the case. That's true. When we learn a modality like this, like a bodywork, Thai massage, yoga, any of that sort of supporting therapeutic work, things come up in the process of learning it. Because there's a whole bunch of reasons, but for one, we also get to receive the work, right? Especially, for example, in a bodywork training, you don't only learn to live to give it, but you also always spend half the time being on the receiving end when somebody else practices on you, right? So things get worked on in your body, in your system, things get released. There's a whole bunch of topics for discussion and reflection that come up in the process, and things that we talk about, and that might bring up certain things for you. We learn how to hold space and safe space and regulating the nervous system and connecting in a meaningful way. And that might bring things up for you. It is all a practice, really not to forget that's the case. It's a practice. And we get to do the practice intensively for, if you do both levels, for example, level 1 and 2, for 2 weeks. That's a lot. So it's a training to ultimately literally qualify as a body worker, but it's also kind of 2 weeks of a lot of self growth, of personal growth. Often people come to these kind of modalities, yoga, bodywork, therapy, from having healed their own deepest and personal wounds. They've had an experience that helped them a lot, and at some point came to that place where they wanted to learn more about it and also share it and support others, maybe in the same way as they have experienced it. And that's a beautiful thing. And I will say to this a couple of things. Personally, my observation is that I think sometimes people come to maybe then, turning that into their work, possibly a little bit too soon. Maybe, the timing was not quite right, because then a lot of things continue to come up, and I would say you do need to be in a reasonably steady place with enough tools to support yourself in that process. And I would also say that if you are maybe in the middle of a deep trauma process, then definitely joining one of these training courses is not the right time. There would be a better time maybe later on. So let's say that. Also, this healing process, or that process to develop that resilience, is ongoing, and in my mind also never ending. It's an ongoing process, and there will be ups and downs in that. So there will always be more work that needs to be done. And when we then move into a space of into work, holding space for others that potentially also have quite a lot of stories and stuff going on for them, that's not always so easy to hold, for sure. So we need to be really in our capacity to be doing that work, and not in a place of very easy overwhelm, right? So that's really not to be underestimated. And then the irony, of course, also, that once we start working in these modalities, for whatever most bizarre reason, meaningful self-care routines very often come short, which really is no good, because that is, I think, one of the key reasons why a lot of the time people working in supporting roles and also struggle, with their own overwhelm, because it isn't easy. It does take a lot, hands down. It really takes a lot, holding space for others. So aside from the regular and very, very important, meaningful self-care routines that, in my mind, really are essential. In fact, I run a whole training on that, the somatic toolkit. It's all about regulating our nervous system so we can show up in a more meaningful way for ourselves and others and the people that we work with the capacity for co-regulating. I believe these trainings that we go on, and maybe continue trainings to kind of add things to our existing toolbox, are important, because they are, as much as they are an opportunity obviously to learn more and to add things into your toolbox, there are that chance to reset our own system, to release, to restore, maybe even to reignite that kind of passion and energy and fire for the work. And I believe a more meaningful space where that can be facilitated and be fostered and encouraged, and where there is a space for all of that to happen, is when we are in a residential environment rather than in a classroom in the city. I think that probably makes sense. And I'm saying this really from personal experience, because a lot of my trainings have been in that setting, and they have been so meaningful in respect to all of this, every single time. And so that's really why I run many of my trainings also in that residential format. Not all of them. I am also very aware that, if I run a training in the city where there is no additional fee for accommodation, food and everything else, that makes it financially way more accessible. So I also try to make sure to balance that out and run some of the trainings in a different format, for sure. But most of the trainings are residential. And sometimes they come as both options. 1 year it might be not residential and another year might be residential. So that is why. And in respect to the Thai massage trainings, from a certain level, which is actually level 2 already, so part of the practitioner training, and all of the advanced trainings, they are definitely residential, because we are really getting also to the real depth of it, the therapeutic qualities, where it really is all about holding space for people who are dealing with all sorts of things. And so we need to make sure we put ourselves into a space where, we are held, and where we can grow and do the work on ourselves. So that's absolutely, it's just vital. There's no compromise on that. That's as far as I would go on that. There's no compromise on that. So there is an opportunity to do the level 1 and 2 in September. Usually it's every year in September that I run that intensive. Doesn't mean you have to do both levels straight away at the same time, but some people really love that real deep dive and come for 2 weeks, especially obviously if you come from abroad. There's just one flight, of course. In those 2 weeks, then we actually have also quite a few regular breaks and time and space to breathe and to process, to integrate all of that. That is just so important. And it's usually around the first 2 weeks of September. It will be so this year. I will post the link below if you're interested. And obviously, if you have any questions around that or any other thoughts on this, also, those of you who might already be body workers, have done trainings. Maybe you've done trainings in a very different format and really appreciated that. I would absolutely really love to know about that. Please do comment below wherever you catch this video. I'm always really interested in exploring these options and and tweaking and refining my take on this, and then obviously also the formats that I offer my trainings in. Thank you so much for listening, and take care of yourselves.